Who's excited to be here this morning? Ooh, a little bit. That's okay. I'll work with that. This morning, I am very excited to be talking about serving because that is actually one of my favorite things ever. So I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited. And I want to start off with a story, if that's okay with you guys. It is a story about 7 years ago. So later on, there'll be a photo. And I just want a disclaimer now. Don't judge me on how I was 7 years ago because it was 7 years ago. So it was a time when I was having 7 months of traveling around Europe, and I loved it. It was such a cool time. And one of the opportunities I had was to travel, a number of countries, but one was Rome. And I loved Rome because I'd studied a lot of history about it. I love history. And the thing I was most excited to see was, can you guys guess? The Colosseum. That's right. And it was, I was traveling with my friend Andy, and we were on a very, very tight budget. So tight that we brought our own cornflakes with us, and milk powder, and bread and chips for chip sandwiches everywhere we went. And we did all these free walking tours because they were free. So the problem was with them being free was that actually it was in Italian and we didn't understand a thing. But we were hoping they would take us in the direction of the Colosseum. And we found the Colosseum and we had the best time. The lady was like talking about all this history stuff, I'm guessing. The rest of our group was just like this. And we were like doing these poses like this in the air and like pretending we were holding the Colosseum because we couldn't understand anyway. So we're like, let's just get into this. We were doing all the photos like you do as a tourist. Do you want to see a picture of one of our photos? Here it is, right here. Pretty awesome. Except, who knows that that's not actually the Colosseum? Yeah, well, we didn't know that at the time. And so we were wondering, why is no one else getting so into this? We were like, it must just be the culture. So we went crazy as we could. We did a nice one as well. And we were so excited, and we were like, man, we're going to come back there and take more photos. Imagine it at sunset, da-da-da. And then about half an hour later on our tour, we came to, can you have the next slide? The real Colosseum. And we were pretty embarrassed because it was actually like 4 times bigger than the ruins of the library that we had found. And so we had to go through the whole touristy thing again, and everyone else that time was more excited too. So they probably just thought we were really weird the first time. But how many of you have ever missed something so big like that? You know, the Colosseum is ginormous. It was ginormously embarrassing, and unfortunately, that wasn't the first time for me and Andy because we had also mistaken the wrong waterfall for the Niagara Falls and done the exact same thing. There's so many waterfalls by Niagara Falls. Who would have thought? So anyway, we were those tourists. But the whole thing is, actually, sometimes we miss things that are really big. Sometimes you might miss something like a big anniversary or birthday that you shouldn't have missed. Or maybe you miss a big exit sign on your road trip where you should have been going. But the thing I want us to talk about today is something I don't want us to miss because it is so big, and that is serving. And serving everybody always. And you only have to read the Bible a few pages, a few stories to see that actually serving is one of the biggest themes in the whole Bible. And yet, sometimes, as Christ followers, we miss it completely. So today I want us to be a church that doesn't miss it. So we're going to dig into it together. And if it's your first time here, then we're very excited to have you here because you've come on a great day. Like it was said in the welcome, you've come in the 5th week of our Everybody Always series. So we've spoken about loving everybody always, welcoming everybody always, honoring everybody always, and forgiving everybody always. And today, I want to challenge us to serve everybody always. So we're going to start off with another story in Rome, and it's not the Rome where I'm taking photos of the wrong Colosseum. This is the real story of Rome when Jesus actually lived at that time. So Jesus was in Rome when Rome was this bustling place that it was actually like it had the most power in Europe. In fact, they were striving for world domination, and they had a lot of power at this time. So there was like markets and businesses and farms and a lot of people, and the city itself was working very well. And it was working well because wherever you put a huge group of people together, you actually see that they start naturally figuring out where they fit in this in the city. So there naturally became this class system, and it was like a hierarchy. And the class system involved 7 different levels in this hierarchy. So I want to show you guys today what those levels were. So first of all, there was the Caesar. Has anyone heard of Caesar before? Yeah? Awesome. So this guy was the top dog at the top of the 7 rungs, and he had 24 elders follow him around wherever he went, declaring that he was coming and declaring that he was Lord. So they treated him like a god this time. And then there was the Senate. So the Senate was made up of 600 politicians, and their job was to govern Rome's provinces as well as the empires, and there was 600 of these guys, so they were pretty important. So they were second on the rung. So yeah, there was these 2, and then there became the equestrians, and it's not the horse riding equestrians like I wished it was, but it's actually the guys who had paid their way to this point. So they obviously owned a lot of land, they owned a lot of businesses, and they were guys who, a lot of them had been in the military as well, and they had a lot of power and say. So they were third, okay? And then we have the next up is the Decurions. So these guys, they were also military people who had a lot of power. They were politicians. They were made up of a big group of people. And these 4 here actually only made up 3% of the whole of Rome's population, but yet they made all of the decisions. So you imagine how the other 97% felt. So the next up we had the Roman citizens. So these guys, they were born into the position that they were on their ladder. So maybe because of their family heritage or just the upbringing they had or the place they were born, they automatically fitted into this ladder, and they kind of fitted in like middle class. So it wasn't a bad thing to be a Roman citizen, but they weren't the top dog. So they came along down here. And now we're getting near the end of this hierarchy system. So you can imagine how the people at the top started to treat these people. And the next was a freedman. And a freedman was somebody who used to be a slave, or they used to be a servant, and they had either worked really hard, or they had paid their way, or someone had paid their way for them to get out of the position of a servant or a slave, and now they had gone up 1, okay? So they were up 1 rung. And then at the bottom, who do you think's at the bottom? The servant. You guys are onto it. So the servant was the lowest of the low, right down here, where everybody treated them like the lowest of the low. So this was Rome at the time, okay? And this is the Rome that Jesus came into, and he saw this hierarchy thing happening. And what people were trying to do is they had this mindset that if they were a citizen, but they studied hard enough, or they owned a business, or they worked hard enough, maybe they could work their way up to this next level on the rung. And their whole focus and their whole identity was focused on getting them to the next rung, so that maybe they'd find value or worth in moving up the ladder of this class system, so that somebody would give them value and give them worth. And so then Jesus comes into this, and how do you think he felt about this system? Terrible? Yeah? Well, actually, when he came along, he saw that, this system that had naturally been happening, it wasn't the way he planned things to go. And it's the exact same thing for us today. Maybe we don't have these titles, but we're constantly thinking, if I just got that promotion, if I just got that job or that house or that car, maybe I could move up to this, and then people would take me seriously, and maybe I'd have some value or some worth. And we actually do this whole ladder climbing thing as well. We don't have these names, but it's the exact same thing for us. And so when Jesus came into this, he was thinking, this isn't the way I planned things to go. And he came in, of course, at the top, knocked Caesar off, and then everything went well. But that's not really what happened, is it? He came in, and he didn't actually want earthly power. He wasn't fussed about being the Caesar or the Senate or a Christian. He didn't really mind about that kind of stuff at all. In fact, where he came in, he took the position of a servant at the very, very bottom. And we know him as this guy who should have been at the top, but he flips things around a little. And if you look up what a servant is, in the dictionary, this is what it says. It is someone who performs duties for others, a devoted, helpful follower. So this is where Jesus came in, and then he calls us to serve everybody always. So if we look up to serve To serve is to show extreme kindness and help to others. So these two words of serve and servant go hand in hand. And so this is actually what I want to challenge us to do. We want us to be a servant for everybody always. But not the sort of servant that gets used or walked on, but someone like Jesus when he came in. So when he comes in and enters things, he wasn't wearing the flashiest clothes. He wasn't born in the best place. In fact, he was born in a barn. And he didn't come in to try and challenge anyone for this alpha male position. He humbly came in as a servant. But the way he came in was actually a leader. And that's where he flips things around. And he says to us today, hey, don't worry about this ladder climbing business. I want you guys to worry about serving everybody always, and the rest will take care of itself. And once we do that, it naturally flips upside down. So in order for us to be able to serve everybody always, there's a few things we need to do. So one of them, the first one, is to have the same mindset like Christ had. So he comes along and he decided that he would enter at the lowest of lows and he would treat people equal, and he asks us to do the same. And if you're a Christ follower, then this is actually something that you are asked to do. It's something that's required of us, and it's something that we're challenged to do. It's not really an option. He designed us to want this. But if you're not a Christ follower and you don't think this is for you, then it actually is still for you. Because can you imagine if you treated all your relationships and your friendships and the connections you had with people this way, that you viewed them as equal and you still decided to serve them regardless? So it's for you as well. So don't tune out, because this isn't something we're wanting from you, but actually this is something for you that's going to benefit your life. So there's when we think, okay, what does it look like to have the same mindset of Christ? Luckily for us, there's a perfect example of it that Paul, he's one of the authors in the Bible, and he shares it with us. So we can have a look. It's in Philippians chapter 2, verse 5, and he says, in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Jesus Christ. So he already knows what the mindset of Jesus Christ is, and the way he did things, and his actions and his relationships and the way he interacted. And he's challenging the church at the time to do the exact same thing. So then the verse goes on and it says, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. So he is God, and he comes in to earth just in a human form, and he could have been like, guys, I'm the boss, I'm God, this is my title, this is my position, and so deal with it and serve me. But he didn't actually. He just viewed himself as equal as everyone else. And it goes on, and it says, rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. His obedience and being humble like a servant, actually the only thing worse than a servant, they're already on the lowest rung, but the only thing worse at this time was actually a servant who died publicly on a cross, because that was just utter humiliation, and Jesus did that. So you can imagine the Romans viewing him as the scum on their shoes. But he actually did that for you and me. And the whole reason that we serve is because he did such an extravagant thing for us and set the bar so high for us to follow his example. And that's why we're called to have the same mindset as Christ. So when we're thinking about this mindset of Christ, sometimes we think about this ladder thing, thinking, it's our whole life journey and purpose is this ladder climbing and the ascent, pretty much. If I get this, then I'll get this, and if I just get one rung higher, and it's our focus, right? And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, and I'm not saying to do the complete opposite to the point where we devalue ourselves and think, oh, I'm nothing, I'm worthless, I'm at the bottom, because that's what God wants. That's not what he asks. He actually says, it's not a path of just thinking of yourself less and being like used like a doormat, but it's actually treating others as equal, like that verse says, and humbling yourself to serve everybody. Doesn't matter if they're above you, below you, beside you. It's humbling yourself and treating everybody as equal. So this whole culture at the time, you can imagine if this is the system, and then Jesus came in, threw a spanner in the works by being at the bottom, and then yet he became such a well-known leader and he was followed by many. So people would have been thinking, what is going on? This isn't the way it's supposed to be. And Jesus flips this whole thing upside down. He puts himself at the top, and then he views everybody as equal. So he goes around, and we can see that he's talking to the unclean, the lepers, the people who are sick, the people who are pushed outside the walls, who weren't even allowed inside the city anymore. Now he's talking to them, and people think, what's going on here? We don't understand this. And then he goes further, and he takes on the posture of the servant, where he has the same mindset as Christ and the same posture. And this is what he asks us to do. So he, even in one story, his posture is actually down on his knees, washing his disciples' feet, which is definitely the job of a servant. So here are these people in Rome thinking, who is this guy? One minute he has whole crowds of people following him, and he came in as a servant, and now he's washing people's feet. Like, what kind of king does this? And so he's continually throwing out their culture at the time and bringing in his own. And he also, we see him speaking to demon-possessed people, and he's just eating meals with people who didn't make him look popular or cool. And he just flipped this whole thing on the side. And this is exactly what he asks us to do. Have the same mindset of Christ and have the same posture of Christ. And the thing I want to ask us, if we are having that posture, if we are having that mindset, then the question you want to ask is, how low can you go? You guys know the game Limbo? Well, we actually played it a little while ago on someone's birthday here, and we were on roller skates even, which made it really hard. But we have a few talented people in our church, and you can bend right backwards, and the whole aim of the game is to go as low as you can, right? As you can imagine, there was a number of bails and fails, but the whole time we're chanting, how low can you go? And imagine if we cheered each other on, saying, how low can you go, and serving someone else, and not being like, ooh, I can't believe you just did that. I can't believe you picked up someone else's rubbish that wasn't even yours, but actually chanted people on to just serve and go as low as you could, because this is the kind of thing that Jesus asks us to do. And he set this bar himself, doing all of these things, and then he says, hey, do as I do. He doesn't just tell us to do it. He's the kind of leader who serves first and asks us to do the same. So today I want you guys not to worry about this ladder at all, because Jesus didn't worry about it, and he doesn't want us to worry about always trying to get to the next rung. He says, forget the ladder, and he makes it clear, and he says, copy me, do as I do. So today I want to make it really clear for us by three things. And this is where you find real success and value in God's eyes, which will shape your identity. Doesn't matter what society says. So it's three things: go low, go last, and go love. So go low means have that mindset. Don't worry to go as low as a servant. Don't worry about trying to climb up this rung. And in Matthew 20 verse 28, it says, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his whole life as a ransom. That's the kind of mindset that we should have. Don't worry about who's going to be serving us. If even him, the king, came to serve other people, then how much more should we? So that's go low. The second one is go last. And this means have that posture. Don't worry about yourself and pushing in and standing on others and using others to get higher on this ladder. He says go last. And in Philippians 2 verse 3 he says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself. And that's not devaluing yourself, but it's valuing others the way God values them. It's that flipping this whole thing again. And then the last one is go love. And when you do this, you're actually showing God's love in action. And loving and serving go hand in hand. So if you have the mindset and you have the posture, now you've got to go and actually do it. So this is the action. And in John 13, verse 34, it says, Jesus said, a new command I give you. Love one another as I have loved you. And so he's setting the bar again for us. He's making it so clear and simple. And then he's like, now that you know this, now that you know how I do it, go and do the exact same thing. So go low, go last, go love. You need to remember that in your mind. So we've been doing this series about the Everybody Always, and in it is so many cool stories. I'm sure some of you guys are reading it. And one of the stories I want to share with you today, we actually shared it already this morning in our programming because it's that good. So I'm going to share it with you guys. And so in the book, Bob is talking about, he's the speaker, author, so he gets asked to go to a lot of different places to speak, okay? One place he gets asked to go is this radio broadcasting place, and he gets asked to go there, and it's at Disneyland, so they ring him up, and they're like, hey, are you keen to come to this? Maybe pray about it, it's at Disneyland, and then he says, you pray about it, it's at Disneyland, so I'm coming. And so the day comes, he packs his bags and he goes and he gets to the airport where he looks for a taxi. And instead of a taxi, he actually sees this ginormous limo and a guy standing outside it with a hat and a sign. And he sees that the sign says Bob. And then underneath, he sees that it says Bob Goff. And he's like, oh my gosh, what are the chances of someone else with the same name at the same time at the same airport? And it turned out not many because it was for him. So eventually he hops in, he's super excited, and in the back of this limo is ginormous. There's like a mini bar in there and the sunroof, and he was just like, whoa, I can't believe they spent all this money for me. But he climbs right up to the top where there's the little window between the driver and him, and he hops through and starts talking to the guy. And they've got a bit of a trip to Disneyland, so they're like talking along the way. He's telling him about his family, he's telling him about this job that he absolutely loves, being a limo driver, but that he's going to retire the next month. And so after a little while, Bob got thinking, and he's a bit of a crazy guy if you've read the book. He does extreme things. And he actually says, hey, have you ever ridden in the back of one of these before? And the guy's like, of course not, I would get fired. And then Bob's like, who cares if you get fired? You're already retiring next month, pull over. So he convinces him, they pull over, they switch seats, and next thing you know, Bob has a top hat on and is driving this ginormous limo with the guy in the back waving out the sunroof, and they drive all the way around Orlando and to Disneyland, and they pull up, and the whole thing is that Bob does exactly what Jesus asks us to do. He flips it. He puts someone who is serving in the guest seat, and he honors him, he values him, and respects him by driving him around. And that's it. It's as simple as that. That's what God asks us to do. And maybe we're not going to hijack a limo, but it is just that. It's switching positions and serving somebody else. And I just think it's so practical and so easy like that. And we obviously often think of it as so big that we can't do it, so we might as well not do anything. But I want to change your thinking today, and we need to get super practical. So in order to be able to actually do this, you need to be intentional. And so I want you guys to get out your phones, or piece of paper and a pen if you have them. I'll give you a minute. I want us to get practical together so that none of us miss this and go looking for the wrong Colosseum. Okay, perfect. So this is how we need to be intentional. It's actually putting things into practice and into action. So the first thing I want to ask you is who. So it's who are you going to serve? Okay, you've got 1 week to do this. I want you to think of a person. Think of somebody that you know at your work or in your family, your neighbor, somebody at the gym, whatever it is. Who is that person that you know that you should serve, that you should treat them like they're on the top of the ladder, but you usually treat them a bit lower than you probably should? So I want you to actually write down someone's name. So write down who. Then the next thing is where. So where are you going to serve them this week? Is it going to be that you serve them by bringing them something to work, or are you going to take them somewhere? Are you going to invite them to your home? Are you going to go for a walk on the beach with them? But where are you going to do it? So write that thing down. And the next one is how. So how are you going to do it this week? Are you going to babysit for them? Are you going to go and do their gardens? Are you going to cook them dinner? Are you going to send somebody an encouraging message? It's already on our spinning wheel, so this could tick one off for you. How are you going to serve them this week? And then the last one is when. So this is a 1 week challenge, okay? So when are you going to serve them? You need to set a deadline. I know some of us procrastinate hugely, and at midnight next Friday we're going to be doing this. So maybe set a deadline that's a little bit before that. Challenge yourself. So who are you going to serve? Where are you going to serve them? How are you going to do it? And when are you going to do it by, okay? That is your challenge. And this is exactly what serving everybody is. It's actually just being intentional. And if we are so intentional, it's just simple. All right. So I want to share with you one more story of somebody who did this so simply, and it's in the book again, Everybody Always. And so Bob obviously flies a lot, like we spoke about, and he flies a lot through San Diego Airport. And he says that every time he comes there, there's just this bottleneck of people trying to go through customs and security, and people in that line are like cranky, and they're frustrated, and they're agitated. Some of them are sad, and some of them are in a huge hurry. Everyone in that line has their own story, and they're all going somewhere, except they're all not going anywhere very fast at that current time because they're in this line. So there's a guy named Adrian, and he's at the front of this line. And it's not his fault that it's taking so long, but something Bob noticed that every single time he was stuck in this line, this guy Adrian would choose to simply serve people 3 minutes at a time as he writes down their things. No matter if they were cranky to him, if they were rude, if they were grumpy, whatever, he decided to serve them and serve them like they were the king or the queen. And he gave them respect and love and cared them and had a huge smile that it made all the difference. And it's as simple as that. This guy just chose, I'm going to serve people in my queue. And it can be so simple to do something like that. But the whole thing is he put it into such a simple way that he didn't have to change his whole lifestyle to be able to serve someone else. He just made it simple that it fitted into what he already does. And the whole culture of that line began to change over time as people got to know him. And next time they were in the line, they'd have a chat and a yarn. And it's as simple as changing the culture and flipping things upside down to make it that when you're serving people, it's just part of your lifestyle and part of who you are. And if you worry about things like climbing this ladder, you'll always worry about things like climbing this ladder. But if you instead worry about how you can serve people and how you can reflect God in the way you do it, your whole culture will shift. And we're so blessed at Gracegate to have a culture where people do serve. We actually have so many people who go low, go last, and go love every day just in the way they do things. It's evident their love for God. And we have people here at Gracegate who come and mow the lawns during the week. We have people who come and blow the leaves out of the car park before you arrive on a Saturday. People who come and put the heaters on, put the coffee machines on, all before you arrive. We have people who put out chairs, pack up chairs, cook food, do the dishes, empty rubbish bins. They're behind the scenes, look after the kids, the youth. We have people backstage, people who clean toilets, move props. The list just goes on, and that's already people in this church who have taken up that challenge of serving everybody, and they've put it into action in our church. And actually, Gracegate wouldn't exist without you guys. So I just want to say a huge thank you to people who are already doing this as part of your culture. But it's not just to do it here, it's to take it home and do it in wherever your own environment is, your own home, your own work as well. So one of the things that people serve in here at Gracegate, if you're not sure of your who, maybe you don't know who that person is to serve yet. Keep thinking about it, but maybe it's not a who. Maybe it's a whole bunch of people. And at Gracegate, we have this amazing thing called the A-Team, and they are literally an elite bunch of people who decide to serve the way God does. And they take up that challenge, and they do things like dishes and greeting you in the car park, making you coffee, all kinds of things. And the A-Team is such a blessing because they're people who have just literally taken this and put it into action. So I want to show you guys a video of the A-Team so you can see just how cool it is and why you want to be a part of it. So check it out.
I am walking towards you, because I can see that you were given a golden heart. All of the stories that you've ever told me have brought us close. Closer to notice that you are the closest to strange like me. And we are made of the same parts. We were made from the same heart. The world might think that's one thing. To me it's certain nothing else is right. Your beautiful facial expressions will tell me what I need to know. And you mumble the weirdest collection of words, but I thought them too. We are made of the same parts. We were made from the same heart. The world might think that's one thing. To me it's certain nothing else is right.
Let's give all those people a hand who are already in our A team. You know, everybody loves to be served, right? And I'm sure there's a time you guys can think of when you've been served badly. Maybe someone was rude to you, and so you're like, I'm never going back to that cafe again. And you've judged the whole place on someone's service. I hope that never happens here at Gracegate, but I know that I love to be served, and all those extra little things. You know, when you go stay at a hotel or something, and they fold the towels and make them into animals, or just the way they even fold the toilet thing. It's all those extra things where you're like, this is pretty cool. You've been served well. So imagine if we were those people who, everywhere we went, served people well in such a way that it actually reflected Christ's own mindset and his own posture. We have some cards that I want to hand out. They're going to come around, and so they have the A-Team logo, and on the other side, this is an awesome opportunity for you to sign up and serve. So it says, do you want to serve as, and you can tick a few or one. It says greeter, usher, barista, the CAF team, the kitchen team, the lunch cleanup team, or even a van driver. So they're going to hand these out now, and I want you guys to think about it. And sure, you have your who you're going to serve, but this is how you can serve in our community and make a difference the way God's asked us to. So they're just going to pass these out. It isn't just a single thing you do by yourself. It's actually a way you can get engaged in our community, and it's it's a whole life group in itself, and it's something we do together as a team. There's a lot of laughs, a lot of fun, and so yeah, it's a fantastic way for you to get engaged and involved. So when you're going to go through to lunch later, there'll be a bucket there and you can put this in. Otherwise, hang on to it and think about it and think, how are you going to serve? But the whole thing of today is, the thing that I don't want you guys to miss is something that serving is exciting and it's something fun. It's not a drain or a challenge or something you do the bare minimum just about a tick that you've done it, but rather it's something like exciting that you're involved in that makes a greater impact. And I don't want us to miss it, because it is something so big that often we're like, oh, it's so big, there's nothing I can do. Because it is something you can do, even if it's small as serving people in the queue 3 minutes at a time, or switching up the seats with the limo driver. So I want us to be a church that doesn't miss this. It's a church full of people who takes this into our own lives and who does it here at Gracegate. And if we have the same mindset, the same posture, and the same heart as God, it's just going to get easier and easier as it becomes natural for us. So the question is, who do we serve? And it's everybody always. So if the answer is everybody always, then I want to ask you, who are you going to serve this week? Awesome.